Welcome to another watch along. I'm your host Kellerman, and today we're going to watch an interview with Jill Stein, who's the Green Party nominee for U.S. President, and a bunch of people have never even heard of her. Boo! I'll put drinking game rules below if you want to get a little silly with me. Well, guess I'm going to have to get another bottle of whiskey. Okay, Jill, thrill us.
Welcome back. We're joined now from Boston, Massachusetts by Jill Stein. She's the Green Party presidential nominee. Dr. Stein, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you, Mimi.
Can you delineate for us the major differences between your party and the other options facing voters this November?
Our party is very different from the other options. We are a people-powered party. We don't take money from corporations, from billionaires. We don't use the big loopholes that Biden, Harris, Trump, RFK, all the big candidates use these big loopholes. A single donor can write a check for $1 million, and it basically gets laundered into the campaign, which means that, that powerful people can exert a lot of influence from the inside. So we are basically the one party which is not taking legalized bribes, so we can actually stand up for what it is that people want, for health care for everyone,
Legalized bribes
as a human
is
right, which is
interesting
through a
way to
system
describe
that's way
super
more
PACs,
efficient, cuts out the middleman, the red tape, and the bureaucracy, saves a ton of money while it covers everybody. We can bring down the cost of housing, build the housing that we actually need, so-called social housing. We can end student debt, make public higher education free, and above all, cut the military, the bloated military that's eating up half of our congressional dollars and spending money overseas, like in a genocide right now in Palestine, a genocide that's just getting the whole world into trouble.
Is she the
Likewise,
only
in
nominee
Ukraine, we
who's
keep pouring billions and billions into Ukraine as well. We're creating these incredible explosive situations all around the world, which are impoverishing us because they gobble up half of our budget, and they're endangering the whole world. So we are the one party that can do the right thing for everyday people, because we do not have strings being pulled from the inside by the bankers and the billionaires and big pharma and all that.
And I'm showing a map of the United States with your ballot access. So the green is where you'll be on the ballot. The lavender color is awaiting certification, actively petitioning in Kentucky, and not on the ballot in just a few states. Can you review what's going on with your ballot access and also what's happening with Wisconsin?
Great. So simple good news first is that we won in Wisconsin. So we will be on the ballot. The simple story is that the Democrats don't like competition. They need to rename their party. It should be called the Anti-Democratic Party, not the Democratic, because what they try to do is throw their competitors off the ballot.
Jill.
Why? Because they don't want to face us in the court of public opinion. They're pretty scared because we are offering what their base wants. Their base, working people, are really tired of being thrown under the bus. So since we have the agenda that actually answers the desperate needs of everyday families and communities, they try to simply get us off the ballot. And they announced back in the spring that they had hired an army of lawyers to throw us off the ballot. And that's what they try to do in state after state. So far, we've been winning
Same with
order
RFK.
to be on the ballot, because we are the one anti-war, anti-genocide, pro-worker climate emergency campaign that is on the ballot pretty much across the country with a pathway to the White House. And where we stand right now is we're on the ballot for about 75–80% of voters, and we hope that will be 90–95% at the end of the day. We're still completing the process. They make it as complicated as possible. They have a system that basically grandfathers in Democrats and Republicans. Same old, same old. And if people are hungry for other choices, well, the Democrats especially try to make those other choices impossible. So that's the battle that's going on. But we are fighting because voters want choices. So we are fighting in order to give a really critical choice that's of, by, and for the people to every voter across the country.
I want to ask you about this. An article on Semaphore says this. This is the headline: third parties were having a moment. Then Kamala Harris showed up. And here's just a portion of what that article says. The biggest factor that was unique to this election cycle was a deep satisfaction of both candidates, which opened the door to elevated third-party voting, even in a time of record polarization. Kamala Harris's ascension seems to have completely changed this dynamic. Can you talk about the impact of Vice President Harris joining the race on your popularity and your your strategy for November?
True.
Our strategy remains the same. You know, Kamala Harris, it's like the Obama mania. I don't know if people remember back to those days, but Obama promised a lot of hope and change. And that's kind of the PR campaign that surrounds Kamala Harris right now. There's a huge full court press going on, a huge propaganda campaign that Kamala's going to meet everybody's needs. But what's there? Who knows? Because she's not putting her foot down to give away what any of her policies are. She's got a lot of big donors. She has more billionaire donors than ever on record. She's raised money hand over fist faster than any other candidate on record. If you saw the convention, that ring of corporate suites at the top of the convention tells you where the money is behind this campaign and behind this party. There's money pouring in bigger quantities than ever. So there's every reason to expect that Kamala Harris will continue in the tradition of Joe Biden and Barack Obama, which is that they talk the talk like they're going to be for the people. But at the end of the day, they have a lot of policies similar to Republicans when it comes to Wall Street and the war machine. And we're going to see our dollars consumed in endless wars, in profits for health insurance and big pharma and big real estate. There's every reason to expect. Barack Obama talked the talk, but when he actually got into office, he threw out homeowners. 7-8 million people lost their homes while he bailed out Wall Street with public dollars to the tune of trillions. So there's every indicator is that it's going to be the same.
I think he did ultimately, but
Kamala has not done a single interview, has not been in a single debate, has not won a single vote. In fact, she did rather poorly when she ran as a candidate over many years. So, we really encourage people, don't drink the Kool-Aid here. Don't listen to the talk. You got to look at what the walk has been. And the walk by the Democratic Party has shipped millions of jobs overseas. Some 30 million American workers have lost jobs
these are
over
a lot
the last
of
several decades.
similar
Some of that's Republican
talking
policies too, but a lot of it is the Democrats, NAFTA, the Wall Street bailouts.
I guess it's just because the Democrats have been
and the
in
disaster
power for the last 4 years,
around the mortgage failing of the banks and throwing out homeowners.
And if you would like to join the conversation with Jill Stein, the Green Party presidential candidate, you can do so. Our lines
we're
are
joining,
Democrats.
baby.
Republicans, 202-748-8001. Democrats are 202-748-8000. Independents,
whatever she's saying doesn't matter. This isn't live anymore.
202-748-8002. We've got a line for Green Party members.
Can we go
Call
back
us on 202-748-8003. That's the same line you can use for texting us as well. Dr. Stein, what was your reaction to the news that RFK Jr. had suspended his campaign and endorsed former President Trump?
Well, first, I think it's a real shame that Democrats basically drove him out. They were using the same legal tactics against him that they've been using against us. And I think it's a real sad commentary on the anti-Democratic Party that they throw candidates off the ballot. That said, I don't see myself in the same camp at all as RFK. He was new to independent politics. I don't think he actually knew what he was getting into. He's new to politics altogether. He comes from a family of political aristocracy.
Politics.
He had no idea what it means to get in and fight the system for deep substantive change. My problem with RFK was that while he talked about change and while he talked about peace, he was actually as rabid and violent a pro-war candidate as any, especially in the area of Israel and Palestine. And he very much supported the genocide and the explosive war that is growing in
Might
the
even
Middle
be
East right
more
now. So I
violent
did
than the
not
other
see
two.
him as a peace candidate, and I
More
saw him
violent
as
in his
not
personal
exactly
life.
honest and forthcoming about that. And likewise on reforming the swamp. He talked about reforming the swamp, but he was gobbling up big money. He had a super PAC supported by millionaires and billionaires. So his money, again, was coming from the swamp, and you can't really fix the swamp when you're part of it.
We've got a question for you on text from Mika in Hendersonville, North Carolina. A question specifically about trans adults and children. I find myself less and less interested in the Democratic Party as their support for my community seems like empty shouts to the wind, pandering to us. I will vote Democrat as they don't seek to take away rights, but I want a party that will actually fight to expand our rights and freedoms, not just pander to us for our votes.
Yeah, so the Green Party and my campaign have always supported trans rights as basic human rights. And we
Well,
stand
she just
for
lost all the
ensuring
Republican
that
votes.
those rights are protected in schools, in jobs, in housing, that whatever one's sexual preference or identity is, people deserve full opportunities, economic, housing, education, and so on. It should have nothing to do with one's race, one's religion, one's gender identity, or sexual preference.
And let's go to the calls now and go to Ian in Frederick, Maryland. Green Party, good morning.
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much. And it's great to be on with Jill. And I just wanted to say at the outset, thank you so much for making sure that voters have an option beyond the parties of war and Wall Street in this election. I was very proud to vote for you in 2016.
She has a cat.
And I feel
I'm a cat guy.
even prouder to support you this year because of the way that you have centered Palestinian humanity and opposition to genocide in your campaign. And I think the contrast with the Democratic Party, when you look at the convention last week
And
their
Republican
refusal to allow even a Palestinian American Democrat to speak at their convention, could not be more stark. And I just wanted to say in closing to those voters who might be listening, who feel that they are sympathetic to what you are in support of
anti-Democrat
from a policy
rhetoric,
standpoint, but worry about so-called throwing their vote away or having their vote be spoiled. I think to them, I would say, you will never spoil your vote by voting your values. And the only way that you will throw your vote away is by making it unconditional in terms of supporting those who reject what you stand for. So thank you, Jill. I'm with you all the way.
All right, Ian. Your response, Dr. Stein.
Well, that wasn't a
I
question.
really want to thank Ian. I agree completely. I think the Democratic convention was really shocking in many ways to be declaring joy in a genocide. It's like a joyful genocide. And at the same time, to be holding their ears when the Palestinian or the anti-genocide members of the Democratic delegation, when they were not allowed to speak, and they were simply reading the names of some of those who've been murdered. They were reading those names outside, and the other delegates were walking around with their hands over their ears. I think it's just shameful, and it really gets to the core of what is wrong with the Democratic Party, that it is a party of the war machine and Wall Street. It's squandering our dollars, and it is basically knocking out human rights and international law in this genocide that's going full bore. And the fact that they would not even allow people to be heard from, let alone to agree to a weapons embargo, to agree. The U.S. has complete autonomy here, can shut down the genocide in a moment because it's U.S. weapons, U.S. dollars, U.S. military support that is enabling the whole thing. So it was really outrageous for the Democrats to just circle the wagons around it. Same as Republicans. I don't hold them innocent to this process either. But Democrats used to be an anti-war party. They are not now. And I strongly agree with Ian. You don't want to be talked into voting for genocide. You don't want to be talked into voting against your own interests. And if we don't stand our ground, no one else will. It's not only to stop the genocide, but it's also to ensure those resources from this genocidal war machine are used here at home instead for what we need for healthcare and housing and education and the climate emergency.
And this is from Elvin on X. Dr. Stein, I'd like to know why Dr. Cornel West left the Green Party and you have to come in and replace him.
Yes. Well, sometimes in a campaign, you take a leap of faith and you hope things will work out. It's a very difficult thing to run with a new party when you've never run with a party before, when in fact you've never run before. To do that, get to know the party, work with the party at the same time that you're running a presidential election, and to learn how to do that all in one fell swoop. So it doesn't always work out. And I know that the number of debates that Dr. West was going to need to do, he wasn't comfortable with. When you're in a party, people make demands of you. It's a team kind of thing, and it's always complicated being on a team. So at the end of the day, he was just more comfortable doing it on his own. But, don't take my word for it. I think it's important to hear Dr. West out on this. But we are on good terms. We're running on basically the same agenda. Answer. I wish that we were running on the same ticket, and I tried to offer that to him. He was not interested. So, more power to him. He's got a really strong and compelling voice, and it's important that he be heard in this election. But I knew, having done this a couple times before, it's not easy to get on the ballot. And the Green Party had ballot status already and continues to have ballot status across most of the country for the majority of voters. So I did not want our issues, namely our opposition to genocide and endless war and our support for healthcare as a human right. I didn't want to see that go by the wayside. I really wanted every voter to have that choice, which is why I jumped into the race, so we could use the Green Party's ballot lines to lift up this pro-worker, anti-war, anti-genocide climate emergency agenda.
Let's go to Ann, a Democrat in New York. Ann, good morning.
Good morning. Jill, I loved your cat cameo. I'm a lifelong cat lady myself, as well as a lifelong Democrat. And while I really resonate with some of your points, and Ian also made some good points, I think we have to be realistic. Our first priority has got to be to keep Trump from getting back in. And I can't help but thinking that you were a spoiler in 2016, which in part brought us Trump, which in part placed people on the Supreme Court that stood by things like Citizens United and the overturn of Roe. And I'm afraid this could happen again because every vote counts.
Never had a Green Party.
What do you have to say to that?
Great. Really important issues. Thank you for raising them. First of all, about the spoiler, that's part of the Democrats' propaganda machine. In fact, polls showed very concretely, as well as talking to people, that people who voted Green would otherwise not have voted. So what my campaign does is allow people to vote who otherwise don't have a voice in this election. And don't they deserve a voice as well? 1 out of every 3 voters, for example, in 2020, did not vote because they did not like the two parties being rammed down their throats. That's 1/3 of the American electorate. Don't they also deserve a voice? I think they do. Secondly, candidates have to earn your vote. They don't own your vote. And the Democrats act like they own votes and every vote for me was taken from them. No, they didn't own those votes. Those were largely people who would otherwise not have voted. And in fact, detailed studies showed that if I wasn't on the ballot, the outcome would not have been any different because largely my voters would not have been there at all in the election. They were not taken from Hillary. That's the myth of the Democrats. And kind of the proof of the pudding there, the most spoiled election ever for the Democrats was 2010. What happened in 2010? Democrats lost 1,000 seats in the state legislatures. They lost 64 in Congress, 12 in the Senate, and 12 governorships. Were there third parties to blame it on? No, there were not. What happened there was this was following the Wall Street bailouts, where homeowners got thrown out and Wall Street got trillions. People were really angry about that. And, you know, in a nutshell, what happened was that Democrats got payback there because people are tired of being thrown under the bus. That is the fundamental problem with the Democratic Party. It got sold to its big donors decades ago, and it has been abandoning working people ever since. Last point I want to make, well, actually, two last points. One is that on the question of Roe, Democrats had decades to codify Roe, and they refused to do that. So that should not be blamed on Greens. That was nothing but the Democrats' own doing.
Blaming it
Barack
on the
Obama
Democrats.
and Joe Biden both said that that would be the first thing that they did when they got into office, and they never did it.